Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This show is brought to you by Flatiron's Tuning, your source for any aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts. Be sure to check out our store at flatironstuning.com and stay tuned with Flatiron's Tuning. Well, welcome back, everybody, to Flatiron's Tuning. We're here in the shop. DP Dylan with us here today for the podcast. I think this is episode 125, which is kind of wild. As we were recording this, looking around at news stuff, there's been some interesting news articles cycling through, and this one has popped up, and I think it's worth talking about, which is there's now a bunch of discussion about Subaru returning to the WRC. Now, what's interesting about this is that this is not a rumor. This is not something that was like leaked or like somebody, an anonymous source said, "Hey, Subaru's looking at doing this." This comes from a press, I don't know, like a press session that the head of the FIA, Mohammed bin Sulayem, did, and some of the guys from Dirtfish were there, and they were kind of one of the first ones to report that apparently Mohammed bin Sulayem is talking to Subaru and Akio Toyoda about Subaru returning to the WRC. Now, the odd thing about that on the surface is that the WRC cars, the Rally 1 cars, the top tier class, the cars are now very specific and they're very, very similar. And you're required to run an inline-4 engine and it's a hybrid drivetrain. Neither of which Subaru really has that would fit in this class. That's where Akio Toyoda comes in, because apparently he has been involved in the conversations because Toyota owns a percentage of Subaru, saying that Toyota would make available to Subaru the engine and drivetrain and hybrid system that they're using in their WRC cars for Subaru. So, like, this is from very reputable sources, but nothing is for sure. And it sounds like it would be at least a year, if not 2 years or so, before this would actually happen. But because of who it's coming from and like the fact that like this is probably really, these discussions really are happening behind the scenes, it's worth talking about, I think. So what are you guys' initial impressions with this?
I think it's a really interesting idea. It kind of falls in line with like motorsports going with their next gen chassis in other varieties where it's going to be like a global chassis situation. It's only Toyota Subaru in this case, but it kind of steers things in that direction where it's going to come down to driver skill versus that car's got a different setup. XYZ is different on that guy's car, so he had more grip here and less grip there.
That's the interesting thing is these cars now. So the safety cell of the Rally 1 cars, it's a tube chassis. Mm-hmm. It's all like the dimensions are pretty much specified. Like really, all of these top tier cars kind of have to fit into the same kind of cookie cutter shape.
Yeah.
So that's one of the odd details is there's no car that Subaru makes that actually is the right silhouette or size or whatever for this car. So it wouldn't be a global platform. The speculation right now is that because basically it's a tube chassis car and then they just put body panels on to make it look like whatever car. So it would probably look like a new WRX, but it's smaller. It's too small and it's a hatchback.
Yeah, it's all the good things.
Okay, I'm gonna throw us off on a tangent here.
Yeah.
Okay, I have two weird things that come to mind first. Okay, it's really interesting because I think recently we had talked about how Subaru was actually sort of thinking about distancing themselves from their relationship with Toyota a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yes. No, and that's actually worth discussing.
It's interesting hearing this like switch of like, oh, maybe we'll actually use their car in like rally. Another thing that it kind of just like, light flash idea in my mind there was like, I wonder if this has any relevance on the next generation STI chassis, because they made that comment about how they're not going to develop the next generation STI on the current internal combustion WRX platform.
Right.
But, the BRZ, they've worked with Toyota in the past to make new platforms. What if this is sort of some pre-inkling of, hey, down the line, this new WRC chassis might be related, a cousin of the new STI or something like
Right.
that. Like,
Yeah.
it makes me wonder. Totally just shot in the dark, like, idea that popped up in my head. But
Well,
It's-
so
it's
the
funny.
interesting part of it, like the thing that pops into my head when you say that, Dylan, is so right now in the world market, Toyota, they're competing in the WRC. They have the GR Yaris and they have the GR Corolla. Now in the WRC, their car is the GR Yaris, so they have in the world market, but not here, a car that looks like their WRC car, and like that was one of the big selling points of the GR Yaris and the GR Corolla here is like, hey, this drivetrain is derived from our WRC car. Like they've got a current race car with, and they're using that pedigree to sell and I guess two cars in the world market, one car here in the States, and then the GR Yaris everywhere else. Subaru, if they come in and they do this, like if they make it look like a WRX, okay, but there's nothing in common between the WRX and this WRC car. If Subaru was going to get any kind of a benefit similar to Toyota for doing this investment to go out and compete in this way, they would have to either just say, well, yeah, this looks like our WRX, but it's entirely different, or they would come out with another car like the GR Corolla or GR Yaris here under the Subaru badge, which I don't think Toyota would do that.
yeah, I know.
And I would also speculate that maybe Toyota not wanting them to do that would be because, well, hey, if we're giving you all of our engine and drivetrain technology to come out there and race against us, we get to sell the car to the public, but you don't. I mean, I could very much see that being that there'd be some interesting boardroom discussions there as far as whether or not that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then like so if Subaru, let's say that it is a GR Yaris, just with the Subaru badge on it because it's going to run underneath the Subaru flag and Subaru's footing the bill for this extra team, like what kind of benefit would they get then if they couldn't turn around and sell it? Sell the car to or a similar car to the public.
Exactly.
It's related to our whole discussion about this weird situation now with the Vermont Sports Car Rally cars, where it looks like the new WRX if you squint, but it has almost nothing in common except for maybe the front doors and the windshield, than with an actual WRX.
Yeah.
But the cost of running a WRC program is probably going to be a factor of 10, maybe two factors of 10 greater than what they're doing here in the States, I would guess. So is it worth it?
It could be. I mean, maybe Subaru is taking the opportunity to get their brand out there so people, maybe they're seeing some numbers dropping and they want to at least say, hey, motorsports is kind of where we came from. So they want to come back to that, like, harken back a little bit. And to Dylan, your point, maybe they are working on prototyping something in a nasty little hatch that they can then put out there with their R&D, and they're just using, like, this is kind of a hold my beer, we're going to try something. And Toyota's like okay with it since they're the ones who are getting, effectively like this is our technology.
Yeah.
Imagine some crazy future where like there is a Subaru GR Corolla, like a rebranded GR Corolla that is the new STI hot hatch. Like I could picture it happening, in a perfect world where everybody gets what they want.
I'd buy that.
Yeah.
I would buy that
like,
in a minute.
It would be really weird, like you said, a lot of high-level boardroom discussions that are going to go into that.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
But
right
it's
now,
been done before with the BRZ.
with the BRZ, with the Solterra and the BZ4X, and like the next electric platform that's slated to come out from Subaru, which we should see probably in about 6 months, is an electric SUV, something basically it's the size of the Ascent but all electric. That's also being developed in conjunction with Toyota, and that supposedly, at least as of right now, I think is going to be built in one of Toyota's plants. But so to what you had alluded to earlier, Dylan, this is the really interesting part, is that now in the background there's starting to be more chatter of Subaru wanting to, instead of partner up and pair up and really line up with Toyota, Subaru is now wanting to split from Toyota and go on in their own direction. Now, where this would make sense to me, one, is, especially with these electric platforms, the characteristics, the distinctive characteristics of a car, to a certain extent, they're a little bit more muted because, like an electric motor, there's not as much difference between one electric motor and the next, or the way that an electric powertrain works in the next. So the identities for each car manufacturer, they really have to kind of find what their identity is with an electric power plant. And when there's so much platform sharing between manufacturers, there that differentiation of like, well, what makes a Subaru a Subaru, what makes a Toyota, and how is this different from a Tesla or something else? Like that's something that each one of these manufacturers kind of has to figure out to some extent. And like whereas I think there's some common ground between Toyota and Subaru. I think maybe maybe Subaru is saying like, well, we can't just do exactly what they do because then they're losing their identity.
Yeah.
The other, and when we're like the first piece of this where this started to come out is this other rumor that was swirling, and I think we talked about it a few months ago, of the fact that Toyota is developing the next generation GR86, but not with Subaru. And so like they're going completely on their own, and that new car is supposed to be slated for 2028, which is now the time when Subaru is supposedly coming out with the next STI. So like it's like the BRZ partnership with Toyota is going to end right at the same time when the new STI comes out, and then Toyota is going to come out with their own GR86, which is interesting. And that's also about the same time when the GR Corolla, it's estimated like that's when the GR Corolla will not be available anymore. So like it's very, there's some stuff in the background that makes sense. Like, okay, well maybe this split between Toyota and Subaru is starting to happen and get some momentum. And from a Subaru enthusiast standpoint, I think there's an advantage to that because we like Subarus because we like what Subaru does with cars and the Subaru identity of a car. If they just kind of merge in with Toyota and everything like 5 years from now is a platform that's shared between Toyota and Subaru, and Subaru's just doing some of the engineering of the platform, how much of the real Subaru DNA is left?
Yeah, it would kind of lose some of the soul of like a Subaru,
Potentially,
in my humble opinion, like because kind of rebellious, kind of just do their own thing, is what Subaru's down for doing, and nothing against them. I'm not knocking Toyota, so don't flame me out there, guys. I know, Toyota's got their things and they're good at them too, but Subaru's just like kind of the little bit rowdier, a little bit more aggressive.
They can be.
Yeah.
They're really moving into the Foresters and the Outbacks and kind of like the more utilitarian vehicles versus like the performance side, which is to me is a little bit concerning. Like it is nice to see if there really are these things happening. It is kind of encouraging from one standpoint in that they are putting energies back into motorsports.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's good. And to me, like with a small company like Subaru, and like here where we are in Colorado, and Subarus are literally like every third car you see is a Subaru, you can kind of forget how Subaru is actually a small company. You have Toyota, which is one of the biggest car manufacturers in the world, and Subaru, which is like, I think them and Mazda, or at least from the Japanese market, are the two smallest.
Yeah.
The key when you're a small manufacturer like that is an identity. And so, like, to a certain extent, what they've carved out with the Outback and the Forester, that is definitely an identity for Subaru. But also, like, these big swings that they take, like with the STI, and to a certain extent, like with the BRZ, where they can take a big swing, take a chance, make a car that's different and unique, but that works well and is more or less kind of, let's call it a home run. Something that really, like, grabs the enthusiast base interest because it is such a driver's car, or because of what it does.
Yeah,
and that's what we like about Subarus to a large extent. I think.
I think I was super apprehensive with the new gen of WRX, kind of in that same sense, John. But it's grown on me for sure, and that has me kind of thinking forward about like, what if Subaru could bring the kind of enthusiast base of like race car people together with this like overland cross-trek wilderness kind of crowd. Like, what if they could release like some sort of hot hatch STI, STE, cross-trek STI, whatever, that kind of bridges that gap, that could sell to either someone who wants like a lifted car or wants to modify it and use it as a race car. And the WRX has started to like fill that place in my mind. The
A
new
bit.
2022. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, it actually has some versatility in that sense, and
Yeah.
I wonder where they can go with that going forward for sure.
Definitely, and it being again like reminding ourselves that they are a smaller manufacturer and they cannot just develop an unlimited number of chassis because they just don't have the resources to do that. I think Subaru has been really concerned in the past about competition. You know, why would they make like what if they made a BRZ STI, like this is what we've always wanted, a turbocharged BRZ, but based on the price point, like okay, well what if the turbocharged BRZ is comparable in price to the STI, the all-wheel drive turbocharged STI? Would they be competing with their customer base to sell one versus the other? And you know, I could see them making the argument internally amongst themselves, saying like, well, if we only sell say 3,000 STIs a year, and now we've got a BRZ that's competing, you know, if we sell 1,500 BRZs and 1,500 STIs, they overall end up losing because they now have developed two chassis. They've got double the chassis development that they've spent, and they're now kind of selling half the cars. Now, in that case, I think that if that's the discussion that they had, I don't think that's right because they would be such different cars.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I would say that if there was a turbocharged BRZ, almost none of the people that want an STI for doing STI things would be looking at a turbocharged BRZ. I don't think they are compatible.
I agree.
But the advantage in going with an electric platform, and I'm wondering if maybe this is part of why Subaru had made this shift recently in saying like, no, we're really actually focusing a lot of our energies in this direction. With an electric platform where you can have kind of a skateboard that is much more adaptable, you develop one chassis, and then like you can just put different size bodies on it, but the chassis underneath is the same.
Mm-hmm.
You can make it longer or shorter. I mean, that is a minimal of difference. You're not having to develop an entirely different drivetrain anymore because you just got your rear motor package, front motor package, and then a battery in between. That's it. So my hope would be that they would not worry about making competitive platforms as much anymore because you develop your one skateboard,
Mm-hmm.
put different bodies on it, and then optimize, you know, the suspension or whatever around the body that you put on it, and take those big swings, make those cool cars.
Yeah.
That we as super enthusiasts are looking forward to. I don't know.
It seems like the current generation of cars is kind of like the baby steps towards that
Mhm.
right now.
Yeah.
And hopefully they can just continue like finding cool new models to come out with that can fill those niches, because like that's what we need is more turbocharged BRZs and, you know, the Outback Wilderness Edition that actually can sell itself to someone who is an enthusiast, like a manual Outback Wilderness or something like that.
What I'm hoping is like I was driving the Solterra around and then taking it off road. That was one. It felt much more like a Subaru than I would have expected, or than I expected going in. But it definitely felt like a Subaru driving the car. But what it did was I was so impressed by, and I hope that every car that they make going forward, like this new SUV that's going to come out or that we're going to see in a few months, that it's like that. It has the ground clearance, it has the off-road capability, like at least like the Solterra, if not even maybe a little bit more than that, because that would be really cool. And then I just want to see them take that same kind of I don't know, performance level of platform and then focus that in on something like, honestly, like an electric BRZ. It seems like an electric BRZ that would be small and aerodynamic and lighter, like as a performance platform, and rear wheel drive. Like just leave it rear wheel drive. Have just one motor. I would really love to see what they could do with something like that, and hopefully they will look at it in that way and think of it in that way and take those chances and make something that's really different and cool versus just kind of make everything cookie cutter.
Yeah.
As far as like just continuing on with just a Forester and an Outback and that's it.
And you know, the global platform can kind of hopefully bridge the gap between that, where like it is a little bit cookie cutter in that the motor and some of the drivetrain stuff is similar enough that it's interchangeable.
Yeah.
But having also the cookie cutter dynamic of a bunch of parts can be applied to all of them. Right?
Yeah.
So you can get variation without necessarily feeling like everything's just the same.
Right.
I agree.
I think that'd be really cool.
So I'm actually going to advance a radical idea in that I don't think Subaru should get back into the WRC. And if you disagree with me, totally understand. Leave your reasoning in the comments below. But here's why I say that. One is all of the reasons we've just outlined here. Like if they get into WRC in the way that we've outlined, it really, I think, long term doesn't have much, if any, benefit to Subaru. On top of that, it's as many potential conflicts of interest as you have with the current U.S. rally car. It's like you're compounding that, and you're spending 10 times as much money to have the same kind of weird relationship between your race car and the cars that you produce for the public to purchase. But on top of that, if they would make that big move and spend all of that money, and if it prevents them from moving in this new direction as quickly as they could, it could, in my opinion, that could be a double loss for Subaru. Because you're spending all of this money to get back into the WRC, cool, but it's not relevant to any cars that you make. And if that slows down your ability to really look at what you can do with these next cars that are coming out in 25, 26, 28, then that could hurt them doubly.
Yeah. Another twist I could think of on that is it would be interesting to see. I mean, obviously being a fly on the wall in boardrooms would be amazing for all of this. But it'd be interesting to see the cost analysis of what would it take them to invest in the ARA in America to make it a place where they could actually bring in challengers, they've kind of talked about. You alluded to that in the past. That they were challenging people to come to the ARA and bring it to them. What if instead of going to the WRC, Subaru found a way to take that money and incentivize some people to come compete with them in the ARA? I wonder if they've talked about that, if they ran the numbers, one versus the other, what's going to be the better marketing campaign?
I would even take that one step further, and instead of just focusing on rally, and I can, again, with Subaru, with their off-roading and people using their cars off-road to go, camping, hiking, do outdoor stuff versus, rally racing. I think they should look at diversifying what they focus on and spend money on in terms of motorsports, because there's so many people that are using Subarus in, on track, in autocross, time attack, and to a certain degree wheel-to-wheel racing. Don't forget that stuff, and right now, the BRZ program in Super GT, they finally won the championship. I mean, they've now built 2 different cars. They're on their 2nd generation car. They finally won a championship after competing in that, for at least probably almost close to 20 years at this point. But they finally did it, and they had success there. It's well, look at what you could do with that car, and make a few more of them. Bring it over here. Use that platform that you've now really sorted out and figured out, and put it in other. Try and move it into other race series and run it, or just get more involved, or at least incentivize for enthusiasts more to use Subarus on tarmac events too. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, as they say. And Subaru, I think they really kind of have motorsports tunnel vision a bit, and to a certain extent I'm surprised in some ways that they've continue that Super GT program as much as they have, and I think it's awesome that they have, and I'm really glad that they did. But it's well, guys, you've had some success here, and people really like that. Some people, they don't really even hardly talk about it here in the States, but there's an opportunity there, and there's people that are doing that kind of racing with their Subarus here. Acknowledge that and try and incentivize that too. Spread out, get more motorsports interest for the platform and for the brand of Subaru versus just have it be focused off-road.
Bring a car to Pikes Peak and compete with Porsche.
That would do.
Yeah,
there's some crazy stuff that they could do for sure.
Yeah, or so there's a lot of these classes where the Porsche Cayman is competing, and Subaru said when they were developing the BRZ that the Cayman was one of their targets. Well, make a BRZ race car, something like the GT300, that you could bring over here or have people campaign against some of these Porsches in some of these classes. I mean, to have a Subaru going head-to-head with a Porsche like that and compete with it, which I think based on what it did in Super GT, I think it should easily be able to do. That would be really, really cool. I would love to see that. I would like to see that more than them get back into rally, because they competed in rally so much and for so long. And they're still doing it over here. We know what that looks like. Well, let's see what it looks like if you bring a BRZ race car over here and compete with a Cayman or something like that. Let's try something else. And you never know what doors it might open for Subaru. I don't know. So that's my take on it. Mike, you're hemming and hawing over here.
I'm pontificating all these things because, like, I would love to see more, like, tarmac with Subaru in it. And I'd also love to see Subaru come out with a platform that we could do things like, you know, what you were saying with, like, adding modifications from, like, a chassis.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like they did, like, in the, you know, the early chassis. Like, you know, my Forester is 99% STI right now because the parts all were interchangeable.
Yep.
And I don't think you can do that as much anymore without some serious research and development that, like, you have to know what fits what. But back then it was like, oh, wow, this is the same car.
Yeah.
So if they did something in that nature to help foster, you know, maybe they could homologate a car that could do the things in motorsports and make a fun sporty car that could take on the massive P word, you know, or anybody really. Like, bring the excitement back into Subaru, because unfortunately there's a little bit of a lack of excitement, like, you know, that I feel like. I don't feel it's as buzzing as it was when I was a younger enthusiast.
It dipped down, but it's coming back. I mean, like Dylan said, more and more people are getting more excited about this new FA24 WRX. The more time that we have to see what is possible with it, what the aftermarket can do with it, and more and more people get behind the wheel and experience it and realize, hey, this actually is a fun platform. That there really is a lot here to build on, and the BRZ still keeps going as well.
But I'd also like to see something in a robust four-wheel drive, like, overlanding type application. I mean, like, Outback Wilderness is cool as all get out. And I saw one with a leveling kit on it, and it was tall.
Mm-hmm.
I think it had roughly a 31-inch tire on it. It was big. I was like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see some more development into the off-road side of things.
It'd be cool if they could partner with Toyota for a good transmission for those off-road vehicles.
Well,
not a CVT.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I think that's just Subaru more than Toyota anything. Because like in Australia, they have the high-low transmissions.
Right.
That they've. This is one of the things that I just don't understand is, like, they have so many of these good pieces that already exist. They've already done R&D. They just haven't brought them over. And it's like, why? I can't understand why not. You know, I don't know. And yeah, their attachment to the CVT transmission, while they have made improvements and they have made steps forward, I don't understand why they've focused so much energy on that and ignored something like these current generation or modern automatic transmissions that have come so far to the point where they're now, like, comparable in efficiency, if not even more efficient than a manual transmission. You know, and like, you look at the automatic transmission in the Supers, which is basically an 8-speed automatic, but it's paddle shift, and it performs and it works and does all the things. It's like, why don't lose track of that? Like, that would not be a bad thing.
It makes me wonder, like, why there aren't really options offered as far as those transmissions go. Like, I get that they've done a lot of development into the CVTs and they've really just committed to it, but I mean, almost every single person I know that has owned one of those CVT cars has had an issue with those transmissions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, without fail. And they still work. They get good gas mileage. They do the job for most situations.
And we're saying this is not just a Subaru thing. This is a CVT thing.
In general. Yeah. It's just the commitment to it confuses me when there are other options out there, even things that Subaru has had in the past, that they aren't really bringing back into the fold, like the automatics of the past. So.
Yeah. I mean, that maybe is a whole other topic for another day.
We can talk about that for hours on it, too.
It seems like with the CVTs, for a completely stock car and for a certain set of use cases, it does work really well, and it does get them to the fuel efficiency target that they're trying to hit. And my guess would be that it's because that's they're seeing that as their very best option of really having a dramatic increase in fuel economy versus some of these other options. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I feel like there's got to be some way to make these automatic transmissions, like these new generation automatic transmissions that have 8, 9. I think they've even got like 10-speed automatic transmissions now.
Yeah, you can
To
go
be-
up like
which-
a mountain bike.
Yeah, you've got them so many gears. Like it's got to be starting to get into the ballpark of the ratio options that a CVT has.
Yeah.
But it has a more robust architecture. Like there's, I don't know. I hope that they would at least be paying attention to that, and looking into it.
And even if it's not necessarily the one offering, like having an option for something like that for people who are looking as an enthusiast who really wants to buy a certain type of car. If Subarus really still are like Legos as they've always been,
Right.
and they're starting to go back to that with the global platform, then that is, I think, one thing I could see being a huge selling point for a lot of people is like, we don't make this car with this, but if you really want an 8-speed like dual clutch transmission, we figured out how to make it work for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this is we should move on. But the final point that I'll make, we were talking in the shop, Dylan. You'd found something about eyesight. Like Subaru likes eyesight, this is the system where you're driving your car, something comes out in front, the car can actually stop itself to prevent you from having an accident and whatnot. But it's not available on manual transmission cars. And you found something where there's possibly
there's some article that just popped up in the last week that the new BRZ STI trim, that's like the BRZ TS in Japan, is supposedly going to come out with eyesight on a manual transmission car. I don't know any of the details of how this is actually going to work, but I've seen it, in a hearsay article.
But the point there is that, like, if they had one of these modern transmissions that wasn't automatic, like one of these new current gen automatic transmissions, or a dual clutch transmission where you've got a computer that is controlling the transmission, what the missing piece of the puzzle for the manual transmission cars is if you're going to try and stop the car to avoid an accident, you've got to be able to have the car put itself into neutral, basically.
Yeah.
And so if you had these modern transmissions, all of a sudden, like, eyesight on every car wouldn't be that it would be easy. It'd be just as easy as it is with the CVT cars currently. So maybe for you guys that are listening, there's an incentive to you to look into these, dual clutch transmissions and new automatic transmissions.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, all right. So before we move on, any final thoughts on the Subaru, on potentially Subaru joining the WRC?
I had one in my
All right.
sleep-deprived brain here that just popped into my head. We're talking about carb standards, actually, with the transmissions and all this, and it made me go down this really weird path. What if they're getting back in to figure out a hybrid-type platform to lower their carb numbers so that maybe they can keep the ICE thing going for a little while with their sporty chassis? Because you could drop your, we all know, the PZEV engines and all the hybrid stuff that's out there is great for dropping your fuel mileage.
Right.
And so if you can have your sport car turn off the engine just like anything else when you're at a stoplight, and then using that stop-start tech to really kind of inflate your numbers.
Well, and the electric motor to get the car started and moving, so the ICE engine just kicks in once, like only when you need it or something like that.
Having that high torque motor at low RPM, and then maybe you could even still use a turbocharged engine of smaller displacement and have all the power all the places could be a thing.
On the flip side of our talk about their investment in that, maybe that's the gain that some backboard conversation they're talking about.
Yeah.
We're getting R&D on a hybrid drive from another company, and we're gonna come out and be able to develop something new out of this. Who knows? Maybe
that actually is probably the best argument that I think could be made for them getting back into it. The caveat there is, if it's all a Toyota engine and everything, I mean, I guess if you develop the hybrid drivetrain on your own, like if they're just using Toyota's engine, but it's Subaru's hybrid drivetrain, or like they get 5-year-old Toyota notes on the hybrid drivetrain for when they started in the WRC, and then they kind of build it up from that point themselves, so that then they get something that is actually a Subaru hybrid drivetrain. That could be interesting. It would just, I guess, and to your point, then maybe this next WRX, it would have this new hybrid drivetrain that is developed from the WRC, but with probably a Subaru boxer engine in front of it instead of a Toyota boxer engine. Once you get to that point, like just a bell housing to mate an engine is probably academic.
Right.
That could be interesting.
Keep your fingers
If
crossed,
they do it.
everybody.
All right.
And your toes, but that's where my brain went. That's like as a
If
final
Subaru
little
signs
thing.
off, and then that's exactly what they're planning to do, and I get that in writing, then I would be okay with it.
Only then.
Only then. Only then. And if they also say in that same written document to me, you can just mail that to us, but say that they're also going to help subsidize more road racing with Subarus too. Then I would totally sign off on it.
Well, 'cause I could
That's
see
my requirement.
Yeah, I could see it going down that road with a tarmac, application as well for the hybrid drive. Like,
Oh yeah, I
it'd
mean
be fantastic.
there've been hybrid drivetrain supercars. They have tons and tons of potential. Like if you use the hybrid drivetrain in that way, there is a lot of potential there. You can get benefits of both, like an electric car and an ICE engine. But in like the price point where us mere mortals can afford something, there has not been something that's been exciting in that way.
Yeah.
And that is one of Subaru's claim to fame too. We can't forget that, is that they tend to cater to people who are at the lower end of the market.
Yes.
It's a cheaper base car that you can do more to afterwards and have fun
Right.
with and make what you want. So yeah, there is that side of it too.
Yeah.
We can't forget.
Yes.
Well,
That's not
so this is the other topic that I wanted to talk about, and it fits perfect with that part of the conversation and the part of the conversation a little bit ago where we were looking at what cars are out there and how just for sport compacts there's just not as many choices as there used to be.
Yeah.
It seems to me like right now this current environment is like if you've been wanting to build a Subaru at any point in your life, or you've kind of been thinking in the back of your head or planning out a build, then maybe now is the best time ever to do it. Because, like, there's tons of options. Like, the technology that has come up to the point where, like, if you're wanting to build a DJ car, there's better options now than there ever have been before. And if you didn't want to do the build, and you just wanted to look out there and find something else to buy and jump into, our choices right now are pretty darn limited. Not to mention the fact that a lot of these cars, like everything has gotten crazy expensive.
Yeah.
Like the entry level, like the cheapest cars out there are in the mid-20s. Like the cheapest cars you can get now are about what WRXs used to be. I guess 20 some odd years ago when they came out. But still, it's like cars are expensive. And I've done the math on this like 3 different times, and I can tell you that pretty much if you're looking at a $50,000 car, almost every single time it's going to cost about $50,000. Like there's really no way you can get around that.
I've heard rumors to substantiate that.
And that's a lot to spend on a car. I mean for some people, yeah, totally doable. But man, that's when you really start getting into some of these options. I mean, that's the starting point for anything that's kind of exciting.
Right. So it seems, just to your point, John. Yeah, if you buy something that's more value oriented, we won't use the C word. I won't drop the C word, but value oriented chassis.
Yes.
You could again then invest a little bit into whatever thing you're into. Like if you're into, like, man, I really want to go to track days. I'm gonna, so we go down that path.
Yeah.
But it was like, hey, I've seen some lifted Subarus. Maybe I want to go that way. So you could still you buy the chassis, you do the things because you could take like $20,000 ish into a less expensive platform. Take the remaining, if we want to go with 50, $30,000, wheels, tires, brakes, suspension, before you even add horsepower, and then really have something.
I would even say like if you had $25,000 to $30,000 to spend on a car, and this is discounting the fact that you've maybe been driving your Subaru for the last 5 years and you've been wanting to build it. Well, if you've already got the car, hey, you're ahead of the game. You've already got the car. But what you could get for buying a used Subaru that you want to you've got plans for, you've dreamed of doing, and then to put whatever's left to get the car, put in a fresh engine, go through the drivetrain, make the car that you've always wanted to make, versus kind of going out there and looking, well, what are my options with $30,000? It's like it makes more sense now in a lot of ways to build the car that you want in some ways than to just go out there and try and look. I mean, a new BRZ would be a great option, but it's only got 2 doors. Like that for me, like that's where That's where it all kind of falls apart with the BRZ.
Yep.
I really like the new WRXs. And that would be a tempting one, but I just don't know. Like there's some things that I really like about the new WRX, but there's some things where if it was a new car that I was looking for, it's not checking all the boxes for me necessarily.
Right.
I don't know. I'm conflicted on that one.
Although with the new chassis coming, with the new WRX, the 22 WRX, it's getting it's starting to age. So
Yeah.
if you were to
that's true.
wait, 2024, you started a car that was 30, maybe it's going to come down
To 25,
into 25 ish,
Ooh.
and then you could take that money, put it in a proper 6-speed, and then put some better brakes into it, and you really have something.
Man, even with that car, to just like, I mean, the potential is so high there. Like once Flex Fuel comes out, and we know
Yeah.
Flex Fuel is coming,
Rawr.
if you can get a 2-year-old FA24 WRX and then put Flex Fuel in it and have the car with Flex Fuel for like 40, no, I'm sorry, 30,
30?
probably.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be doable. Okay, that could be fun.
That'd be a hoot, but I think then you're still, we kind of harken back to that transmission being not stout enough for the torque that you're going to make on
Yeah.
the Lord's fuel.
And that to me is, I have a WRX. I've done a lot to the WRX.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I know what it is to take a WRX and like turn it basically into an STI.
Uh-huh.
And I'm about to go the final step so that it basically is an STI. I know what that's like, and that's I guess my big holdup with the new WRX is that I've done that. I know what that process is, and there's parts of it that I really have enjoyed. Like I'm getting older, and with that age comes a little bit of wisdom, just a smidge. And now knowing how much I've spent on this car, which my wife continues to remind me, like I don't think I could get away with doing this again. Like, and so that's where, like, I'll tell you, if they came out with that, like we talked about the TS, like just put the STA transmission in the new WRX. Okay, well now there's all this potential, and I don't have any of these like drivetrain issues as much. Then that would probably be the thing that would sway me to actually like, okay, if I've got the 30 at that point probably $35,000 to buy the car, okay, well now that becomes really appealing.
That'd be a good car, Flex Fuel with the STI.
And why they don't do that?
Like,
Because it's already good.
Yeah.
If they just put the STI drivetrain in that car, home run.
it'd be more good or
Home run. I mean, there's still going to be some things with the brakes you'd want to do, but I mean, way easier to do.
yeah, because you'd have the confidence. I think that it comes down to like building something like starting also in the Forester and turning it into an STI, as I have done over the years. And knowing what that cost me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's the same boat. It's like, oh my god. But if you had something that was had the confidence of like it's got a great drivetrain, it's got a dynamite engine, like
And see, if it was just going to be a daily driver for me, then it would be fine. But I know me. I know what I've done with my cars before, and like I would not want to just daily. I would not be content just driving it on the street every day. I would want to do more with it, and then that's where potentially run into a little bit more drivetrain issues down the road, or I want to improve the drivetrain and the brakes, and just put more money into it. So it's like that. This is where the build thing comes into. Like if you can find like.
And even what you guys are talking about is based off of getting a used, newer WRX.
Right,
so
right.
This is kind of speaking back to there is no time like the present to build something.
Sure.
With new or old chassis. I'd say on the flip side of this conversation, for older chassis, there's no time like the present because right now, like you've said, there is like the most development in the EJ platform as far as aftermarket parts. And all of these companies are still producing these parts right now.
That's true.
Yep.
One thing to keep in mind is as this new platform gets more popular, as more companies that are making aftermarket parts move to the FA24, they might be dropping off some of these EJ parts that they've made for years. Like,
could be.
I'm not saying, we know for sure, but I'm saying, as they're putting their money, research and development, production time into new platforms, there is going to start to be dwindling support for older platforms. We've seen this with Subaru itself, discontinuing old parts for GDWRXs and stuff like that. So I would say, keep that in mind when you're thinking about a new car too, is if you have an old platform that you care about, that you are thinking about building, waiting and waiting for that perfect time could actually be shooting yourself in the foot. You might
potentially
spending more on the long term by not building it now and like really trying to figure out what legwork you need to do to make your build happen.
Well, something related to that, and this is one of the reasons why, like, building a car to a certain extent also has an appeal to me, is like every time I drive my WRX, especially compared to the modern cars now, it is much smaller and for the most part much lighter than most any current car. Like the number of cars that are out there that are sports cars. I'm thinking here of like the new Supra. That's like a 3,600 pound car. It doesn't look like it, but it's actually really heavy. Like the new Golf R's are like, I think they're 3,500 pounds.
Yeah.
You get like the old 2-liter WRXs, and so easy to get these older cars to be 3,000 pounds, and just the physical size of them being smaller. I mean, like parking my GT WRX in a parking lot is like, it's a joy compared to like a lot of these other cars that just have such a bigger footprint.
Yeah.
I mean, I know for safety and all this sort of thing that there's reasons behind it, but at the same time, like I think there's an appeal on the lighter cars.
I agree. I also having the Forester and my Prius, and when I drive my wife's Flex, she likes to make sure to tell me how bad of a driver I am in her big car.
Sure.
Because I can't park that thing to save my soul, because I'm used to this little like car, and she's got the big car, and so it's tough to because I enjoy driving the smaller and more responsive thing.
Yeah.
So
there's something about those older platforms.
Yeah.
There's just something about them that is a little bit different than the newer modern ones, where they just kept getting a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier.
Mm-hmm.
And again, to your point, Dylan, like the options, they're all out there right now. What's really bizarre to think about, like over here in the States, 2-liter WRXs, the newest 2-liter WRX at this point was 18 years ago, 2005. How much longer is Subaru going to be producing that engine, or in those cylinder heads and stuff? The 2.5 liter, I mean, to a certain extent, it's a gift that they kept that in the STI until 2021. So like if you've got an EJ engine, like there's still a long time to go where Subaru's probably going to be producing EJ 2.5 parts.
Yeah.
And there's enough WRXs out there that I'm sure that there's a lot of business in them keeping everything going. But you get 5 years down the road, I don't know, maybe the choices as far as what is available is going to be a little bit less.
Right.
I think another important point to make about the old chassis too is like a lot of these older cars, people have kind of put their hands up in the air and they're like, green speed, I can't tune my car anymore, blah, 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 I'm never going to make power, I can't do my build. And like in reality, it's not really the case. What we've come to find out is, green speed does change the playing field for sure.
It changes like the peak that you could shoot for.
Mm-hmm. Your build will change a bit, but you still have the ability to make, say, 500 wheel horsepower and be emissions compliant.
It's not as limiting.
It just requires a few different mods and some mods that you don't do now, basically.
And really, it's just like having a different mindset, of realizing like, hey, I want to build this car, I want to keep it emissions compliant, but I'm still going to do these things, put on a bigger turbo and injectors where applicable, and tune the car for it, but stick with the stock downpipe, pick a different turbo so that it's not so peaky that like it's entirely, you're losing on both ends with the stock downpipe and a giant turbo. Like have a more reasonable goal so that it's going to be something that is attainable, and all of a sudden now you can have a really fun car that is emissions compliant.
Right, and I think people are chasing the manufacturer OEM numbers, for the modern cars, having all this horsepower.
Yeah.
But to your point, John, they're bigger cars, they're heavier cars.
Yep.
We take our lighter chassis, and you can make 400 wheel horsepower and be completely emissions compliant. And if you do the things to make it even lighter, 3,000 pounds,
Yeah.
You could take the doors off of some big, heavy cars
Yeah.
in a completely legal, compliant setting where you are off of highway streets and all those things. You know,
What you have to remember, and don't do this at home, folks,
Yeah.
is that if you put on a blindfold and you drove a 400 horsepower car that weighed 4,000 pounds, and then you drove a 3,000 pound car that made 300 horsepower, you probably would not be able to tell the difference with the blindfold on. Don't do this at home. Do not try this. But if it was just like pure seat of the pants feeling, like same power to weight ratio, more or less.
Yeah.
You know, like, so with the lighter car, to get that same seat of the pants feel, it's easier because it's lighter.
Yeah.
And there's just the nimbleness of a small car is just something that, like, once you experience it, I mean, you can kind of get hooked on, like, the feeling of, hey, this car really is nimble. It turns when I want it to turn. It doesn't feel like I'm driving a boat. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
I mean, like back in the a long time ago when I autocrossed Lotus Elise at at Fountain, that was a light, nimble car with not a lot of horsepower.
yeah,
And it was a ball. I had
Yeah.
so much fun. It's it doesn't all have to be at like I want 700 horsepower. 700 horsepower on an EJ is going to be a lot like a 2JZ, which is going to be like it's just going to be really boring, especially through a stock downpipe, until you get to that peaky point. You're like
yeah.
and then it's like you got to shift gears, and so it's not going to be enjoyable.
Right. If there's a huge fun factor that you can still hit if you wanted to build a car right now.
Yeah.
And again, you have all of the good options to do it right now. And it's just looking out at again, like if you've got $30,000 to spend, and what are the cars that are out there that you can buy? It's like Toyota Corolla.
Yeah. I mean,
Honda Civic, maybe.
yeah.
Okay, I get it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Volkswagen
BRZ?
GTI.
again, BRZ would be a fun little car, but
Yeah, who?
yeah.
And you could buy an older, like first gen BRZ for
This is where the build comes
Yeah,
back. Like
real
I'll get
inexpensive.
a first gen BRZ, and
throw the Brembos on, throw
yeah,
some funds to it, and you're
Yeah.
still going to come out with something that I think is going to be as light or lighter. It's going to perform better than a new one. It's going to be way more fun feeling.
Yeah.
You're probably going to take some sound deadening and things out of it to make it lighter. So
Yeah.
you're going to have a better perception of speed as well.
yeah, and you could really like with the BRZs. I'm surprised. I think people are doing it, but I'm surprised more people aren't doing it. One of the guys that races a BRZ rally car here, he's got, I think his name's Tim Whitberg. I think he's got 4 different rear diffs that he can put in that are all different final drive ratios. Like, we don't have that luxury with all-wheel drive, but with the BRZ, okay, well, you're not making a ton of power, but you only need to be able to go 100 miles an hour. Put in the shortest rear ring and pinion ratio you can, make up for a lot of that power gap by just dropping the gearing. And
100%.
that'd be a lot of fun to play with if you get a first generation BRZ, and now you've got the budget to play with a couple different rear diff setups, rear diff options. Heck, just the differential itself, like putting in a Cusco diff or something like that. So now you can like really get the drivetrain set up with the suspension set up, and yeah, there could be a really high fun factor in that car for sure. And because again, now we have all of these options, they're all out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, just worth mentioning because again, it's been one of the things that we've kind of talked about in the shop, walked away from, come back, and like, man, there's just nothing out there that really is like it that's exciting. Well, what about doing this build? What about doing that build? There's just just feel ourselves gravitating back to like getting this platform and doing this build versus like looking at whatever is coming out from manufacturer A, B, or C.
Right, like with your chassis now, the GR chassis getting flex fuel, like you've got a ton more fun options again.
Yeah,
that
it
are going to
is.
make
It's coming around.
the Lord's fuel be so now you're at 250 a gallon instead of 450 a gallon. All the torque, all the cooling, virtually knock proof, so you can make all the cool go faster things with some fairly good ease.
Yeah.
In the higher tech engine with the dual ABCS, you can really like rock and roll.
Yeah. It is kind of like this sweet spot where we've got like the peak of development of parts, and it's going to last for a few more years before then. Who knows what this next chapter is like? Things might not be like, we might not have as many options as we do right now in say 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
So
I hate to say it, but I mean, yeah, seeing Greenspeed happen, imagine that continues that way and things go for the worst as far as aftermarket parts. Like, now really could be the best time to build a car.
Well, and just
who knows what is going to happen
from the aftermarket standpoint, where do those development dollars go?
Right.
Like I think right now, like we're riding this peak of all of these aftermarket companies that have developed the max, like they've pretty much maxed out the development of what they can do on all these platforms, and then because like that's one of the question marks with the new WRX as well, is like how far will the development go, because with Greenspeed the things that could be done are a little bit less.
Right.
To a certain extent with that car, it almost just doesn't matter because of how much potential the engine has compared to the EJ engine. I mean, it is just silly how easy that car is. It's cheating. It is what it is. I mean,
yeah, I can only imagine with the R&D that's gone into pistons, rods, engine internals, and the EJ, if that goes into the FA platform for years to come, like I can only imagine what's going to come out of that. There'll be some really crazy products for sure.
Yeah, if they put in the money, and like because there's been this kind of lull in getting the enthusiast base to embrace the new platform, the development for that new platform has been a little bit slow, a little bit, and I guess to be fair too, the way that car runs is way more complicated than the EJs were. I mean, you've got the direct injection, but what they're doing with the electronic wastegate, the electronic bypass valve, and how they're utilizing the turbo and stuff, and how they're doing like different turbo utilization at different RPMs and all this sort of thing. Like there's more going on there. Like it's a simple turbo swap is not as simple, because what about the electronic wastegate and all this sort of thing? But I mean, I think that it will come, but there's kind of like in the back of my mind, I feel like there's definitely a possibility, and maybe a good possibility, that like 5 years from now, the development of the FA24 platform is not going to be exactly the same as the level of development for the EJ platform. Because like if you look at the FA20, the 2-liter WRX, because fueling was such a problem on that car, so it's direct injected, but how do you add more fuel? Like once you get to the point where the stock fueling system is tapped out, it took really Herculean measures to add extra fuel into that car. And so because the fueling was limited, like the turbo selection is not the same. There's really not, I mean, other than adding on like the BRZ manifold and port injectors, and then whatever control method you can, be it a standalone or whatever, to add that extra fuel, that's kind of the limit. Like fueling is really one of the big limiting factors for that FA20 engine. I'm sure that's going to be kind of the 800-pound gorilla with the FA24 once they really start pushing past whatever you can do with the stock system, and so probably methanol injection is going to be what everybody gravitates towards next. Which works, but it has its pluses and its minuses. And then like engine development, the stock engine internals are proven to be so capable. How much energy are the aftermarket engine component manufacturers going to put into that platform?
Will there be 8 different varieties of sizes of pistons and material compositions and all of that? Is there going to be 3 different styles of rods with all different materials and all that? Like who knows? Hopefully.
But maybe they'll go the other way and go into the R&D on brakes and suspension. You'll find like some more options for lift kits and springs,
and I think we're seeing movement in that direction already. I think we're seeing more options more quickly on suspension than maybe on the engine with the FA24 WRX, because one, people, like we were talking about at the beginning, more people want to go both overlanding and tarmac with the car. So like there's actually needs to optimize both types of driving, but that's where, I mean, that's where the demand is more than the engine. And to be fair, like the car is just so good and so capable on its own. Like the number of people that would really feel the need to go in there and pull the engine out, put in higher grade internals and bigger turbos. Because it's, I mean, geez, with the reflash, you're getting over 300 horsepower.
Yeah.
Like once flex fuel lands, I would be surprised if it's not at least 300, basically 350 horsepower, whatever, to the point where now the drivetrain is probably
the limiting factor.
Yeah. I mean, that engine will probably, like, you could probably turn the wick up enough to just completely grenade your drivetrain. Like that will likely be a possibility at some point, especially with flex fuel, just because of how capable.
Atlas Tuning, one of our customers, Sawyer, has spoken about that himself. I mean, he said they went aftermarket system, bigger turbo on their FA24, and I think made it to like 450 or 500 horsepower before they grenaded third gear.
Right.
And he had to rebuild it himself, and it's gone through the whole process. And
a
he's
couple
talking
of
to
times,
me about how he wanted the 6-speed swap it with the STI 6-speed. Yeah, so we'll see what ends up happening. There's a lot of stuff that remains to be seen with the new platform for sure.
But even then, I mean, just the capability, like knowing that the engine can get to that point before you really have to dive into it, just the potential, like, man, how much power do you really need for like 99.5% of us out there, like whatever you're doing with it, probably 400 horsepower is plenty, plenty good.
That's
and this engine is going to probably be able to get there reasonably reasonably.
Right. What do you mean? I want my 700 horsepower streetable daily that I can run nines in.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
sequential on the street all day.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it could be there. There are people that want that.
That is more. We're going to call that the 0.5%.
Yeah, it's true.
The 0.5, and it, like, some people, that's the dream, but like, I guess, even back to the build, like, knowing that, like, the power part of that equation is, like, right there, and then the drivetrain part of it, like 6-speed swaps, people are sorting it out, it's doable. Like, maybe in 2 years' time, when you can get, FA24 WRX of 22 with maybe 40,000 miles on it for 20, put 10 into it, figure out a way to do an STI drivetrain swap into it and flex fuel for maybe 10-ish.
So that'd probably take the 10. And that'd be just
that
a
would
ridiculously fun car.
Yeah.
Like, that goes back to what we're talking about, like, the perception. Like, drive, feel what, a 4,000 pound car with 400 horsepower is.
Yeah.
And then, like, a 400 horsepower, 3,000 pound car.
Yeah.
And just know that, like, that 1,000 pounds is humongous.
Yeah.
In, like, the overall performance and the feel of the car. It's so much more fun to have the lighter car.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, you don't need infinity billion horsepower because you have something that's, like, rock solid with that FA24 especially.
Yeah.
And you just lighten it, stiffen it up, make it dance, and it will be way more fun to drive than waiting for lag and waiting for things to just explode.
Yeah. Honestly, like, the new platform might be as tempting, just from the opposite end of it, is getting, like, a 2-liter WRX with a blown engine for $1,000, $1,500, that you're going to then go through the whole thing and put all the bells and whistles into it.
Yeah.
My friend Rain and I were just having this debate too. He's like, I want something sportier, but I know I could build something too right now. Like, it's a constant struggle. And
struggle is real.
There's a lot of options out there.
Yeah, and just that there's so many options for building, but, like, finding something that, like, you can just purchase, especially off the showroom floor, that, like, ticks all the boxes. That's the challenging one right now, which it kind of it tips the scales back to building, which is the motivation for the whole conversation, I think.
Yeah, I mean, every part of the conversation so far where we've alluded to buying something, we've talked about, if I bought it, I would build it this way after I bought it. So, it's like, it's a struggle right now.
I mean, to be fair, disclaimer, we all have in our DNA the build it.
Yes.
We are mentality. So I guess that's worth mentioning. But there's so many potentials. There's so much potential out there right now from that standpoint, and it just feels like so few choices.
Yeah.
If you're looking to just purchase a new car, I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let us know in the comments what you think. If you had $30,000 right now, would you buy something and build it, or is there something that's on your radar that's about that $30,000 mark that fits the bill? Let us know what you think. And if you're going to build something, let us know what.
Tell us
know.
what.
Would it be the new WRX? Would it be a 2-liter WRX, an 02, 03, 04 WRX? Something like that.
Would it be a Forester?
Would it be a Forester? Would it
could
be
you
an
go,
STI?
Yeah, could you go even further back? Go into like a GC chassis?
Ooh, we didn't even talk about this. Or the crazy one is, would you import an early WRX and STI?
That's true.
Oh, man.
More and
Would
more
you
stuff
import a
is
GC
coming
STI?
around.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're available. They're going up in price a bit, but yeah, I mean some of these Dream Halo cars, they are now something you can actually import, buy, drive, and have. And there's definitely a cool factor there too.
Agreed.
Yeah. So let us know what you think. I think that's all we got. I think
Yeah.
that's all we got for today. So thanks very much for watching. Thanks for your support as always. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, stay tuned with Flatiron Tuning. Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. Once again, we'd like to let you know that your support is what makes this show possible. Be sure to check out our online store at flatironstuning.com for any of your aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts needs. And as always, stay tuned with Flatiron's Tuning.